Now I'll ask our town manager, Fred Presley, to present the town budget. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Mayor Lesser, Deputy Mayor Forrest, members of the Town Council, citizens of Weathersfield. It's my pleasure and honor once again to present to you the fiscal year budget for the upcoming year. As you all know, a lot goes into the production of the budget each year. It's literally months of work, and I especially want to acknowledge the work of our Finance Department, Finance Director Mike O'Neill, who's here, Joe Clerkin from his office, from my office, Cheryl Pierce, who's out in the hallway, and Erica Robertson, all have spent a number of hours working through this. For those of you that aren't aware, we also have a new budget system, which is online. If you're viewing the budget online, it's a much better system, much more user-friendly. It'll allow you to access the data far easier than ever before. But with that said, uploading all the old information and the new information into this new system was a big lift, and staff worked extra hard to get this completed on time. So I hope you take advantage of that. There'll be a link for it in this presentation. It will also be provided to you while we're going to we'll take the two presentations from tonight and put them up on our website that you can access separately, so you don't have to go through the whole meeting. We'll also provide on our budget side some snippets that you can just go and look at certain sections, so you don't have to look at the whole thing. We know that attention span this day and age is particularly important, and we want to keep people, give people the information that they need. So with that, similar to last year, we try to come up with a theme each year, and this year we chose improving service levels while adjusting to the impacts of the revaluation and the continued pressures of inflation that we're all experiencing both here and at home, I know. What we're going to do, this is the brief agenda. You'll see this slide repeated, so the area that's highlighted in the maroon is what's going to be coming next. Like I do every year, I'd like to start with accomplishments that we've achieved over the last year. And once again, there's a lot of focus on the negative, not just in this town, in every town. It's just kind of the nature of people. I think they like to focus on the negative. Sometimes it's easier. But I think a lot of great things have happened this year. All you need to do is drive down the Silas Deane Highway today, Berlin Turnpike, and you can see the number of new businesses either currently under construction or recently opened. That doesn't happen by accident. My staff here, particularly Economic Development, Joya Zach, and others, the mayors, that I've been working with, this takes years to get to this point, and now we're just beginning to see the fruits of that labor. So I just want to acknowledge that. And there's more in the queue as well. So we're going to see more of those things coming online in the next year or two. So I just wanted to point that out and note that, that's very real, and it's something that's happening, and it will have an impact on our taxes in the future. Also, with respect to technology and access to information, I mentioned the new budget system, but we also have implemented the C-Click Fix, the 311 system. You can access that on our website. You can get it on your phone. And if you see anything, a pothole, grass that's not cut, a dilapidated building somewhere, graffiti, you can snap a picture, submit it, and it will geolocate the picture, send it in, and you'll get a response, and it'll assign it to the proper department. Okay, and then we can also report at the end of the quarter, at the end of each year, how we've been doing in getting where the problem areas are, and we can devote resources to that, but you can also see how our response has been. We have a new online permitting system. We had an old one that we had started the town before I got here, but it was only effective in one department, and we really felt it was important that not just building, but the fire marshal's office, the planning department, economic development are all on the same system, and engineering as well. So we upgraded to a new system, which is coming online very soon. A new website finally is going to launch the first week of May. And so again, that's another big lift. All the departments have been working hard to get all the information off our current website onto the new website. So in addition to that, comprehensive plan, the plan of conservation development, the draft update is nearing completion, and a the first ever affordable housing plan for the town is also nearing completion. So that's just a handful of the items. You can see the other things. Last one I'll mention is the enhanced social media presence. You know, I talked about this before. This day and age, we have got to stay on top of the information, what's out there. There's a lot of pages on Facebook and Instagram that we don't control, but we can control our own. And people can learn that if they want the real information, the right information, they can go to our site. So we've really put a lot of effort into enhancing our social media presence, and I think that we've seen the benefits of that in this past year, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. So next, I do every year a community profile. Generally, this information doesn't change all that much, but we'll start with population. We've been pretty steady at about 27,000 people. Unemployment rate also has been pretty steady, just below 4% for the last few years. Median household income has steadily increased, and I'll show a chart on that in a while. Average assessed value, which we're going to dive into in a moment, has increased a lot. It's gone from 175 that we've been using in the past to 277. And again, that's the assessed value, not the market rate. Average market rate value of single-family home is almost $400,000 this year. And again, we'll see those numbers when we talk about the reval. Weathersfield-specific challenges. I mention this every year. We're pretty much a built-out community. What that means is there's limited opportunity for growth, particularly in the commercial sector. Our opportunities are all on redevelopment. That's what you're seeing on Silas Dean. That's what you're seeing on Berlin Turnpike now. These are redeveloped properties that will absolutely increase our grand list, but it's a lot slower than if you have lots of open land that you can develop on. So it takes a lot more work. The grand list growth we saw this year was over 38%. It's almost entirely from that revaluation. We average about 1% to 2% of grand list growth outside of that in a given year. And we still deal with the continued impacts of inflation, just like all of you, particularly like electric prices. Our electric bill, you think yours is high? The high school over here, I saw its electric bill increased by over $300,000 this year. And that wasn't budgeted for because they weren't telling us the increases were coming until we were mid into the year. So these are the types of challenges. I put this chart on the right here. You'll be able to see it better if you look at the presentation later. But essentially, Goldman Sachs puts out a what's called an Economic Policy Uncertainty Index. And they chart this on a regular basis. And if you'll notice the area circled in red there are some 4 periods in the last 30 years where that number's really spiked. One is the 2001 recession. That's the first one on the left. Then it was the great financial crisis or the real estate crash in late 2008-2009 period. COVID-19, the pandemic in 2020 is that third one. And then you see the current time right now. We are right now, today, higher than we were in the 2001 recession in terms of economic uncertainty. A lot of things at play. That's a global report, but it just kind of tells you the kind of difficulty that we deal with as a locality, just like all of you do in your own homes, when we're dealing with this type of economic uncertainty across the board. So these are interesting times, to say the least. Speaking of interesting times, I want to talk a little bit about the reval. I've been getting a lot of chatter about the revaluation. A lot of people are very upset with their valuation. But it's been 6 years since our last reval. We're required to do it every 5 years, but because we had no assessor for almost 9 months, we had to ask for an extension on that, so the reval has been completed. Before I go into the details of it, I just want to say a little bit about what a revaluation is. So it's based upon a number of factors, and people need to understand it's about the real estate market. It's buyers and sellers that determine your property's value. And during the reval, the assessor's office and our consultants analyze recent property sales and a lot of other factors like the market conditions, size, quality, age of the buildings, improvements that you might have made, deterioration, neighborhood conditions, zoning. Assessors also study real estate sales 1 to 2 years to be able to determine different valuation parameters like construction cost and land rates. And all this is wrapped into what's called the mass appraisal methodology. So we don't have like the details on each individual house. What they do is they put in your information on each individual house, take all those factors in, put it into a model, and it comes up with numbers based upon all these factors in your neighborhood and for your specific house properties. What it is not, it's not optional. We have to do this, and the process is very strictly defined by the state of Connecticut. It is not a way to generate extra income. I've read a lot of that on social media. It is simply not the case. This council has no authority over what that reval says, what it does. No council does. It's really based on process only, and it's completely separate from the budget process. So once the reval is done, we have a grand list number, and then I provide them with a budget. They work through their numbers. They come up with a number that they're happy with, that they can live with, and then from that, based upon the grand list number, they have to come up with a mill rate that applies to all of your properties. And as I'll show you in a minute, it really is going to vary for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So Connecticut is the 4th highest state in the country with respect to housing price index growth. We're talking, the other states are Hawaii, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware. All coastal communities, all a lot of growth pressures. Hartford, the Hartford metro region, is the 4th highest region in the country for housing market right now. So a lot of competition. If you've someone that's purchased a home here in the last few years, we put in bids on 4 homes before we got our house. We were outbid every time, and we learned, okay, you got to bid way over what they're actually asking, and you've got to be willing to take a house that you're willing to do some work on. People have been experiencing that nonstop. So when you see your values and you go, what the heck is going on here? How'd that get like that? I don't believe it. Believe it. These numbers are real. And there's also a process, obviously. If you don't agree with it, appeal to the Board of Appeals, and if that doesn't work out for you, you can go to court with it too. So there's processes here. But this chart here I asked staff to produce for me because it shows a couple of things. So what you see there, I know it's difficult to see from where you're at, so you'll take some time maybe later to look at it in more detail. But the blue dots on here, which are all kind of mushed together, are residential properties in town. These are real. These are all of the properties in town, single-family homes. The y-axis on the left is the percent change in the assessment from the previous valuation to the current revaluation. The green dots are condos. I threw those in here to show them as well. The orange line that runs across the middle there is the average increase of all properties, all types, in the town of Wethersfield, which is right around 45% or so. And then along the bottom there you have the home value as of the last valuation. So you can see the first number 0, then you go at the corner, and then you have 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 across. What this shows you right away is that the majority of the residential properties in this town were way above the average, if you look at this. And if that's the case, and they're going to see if we did nothing else, kept the budget flat, they would see an increase, depending on how high they were above that line, would determine the amount of that increase. But there are still some below too, but the majority of the residential properties are above that line. And I just want to show this representation because when I show the next one, which is commercial properties in town, we only have about 350 or so commercial properties in town, as opposed to 10,000 plus residential properties in town. And if you look at our 8,000 plus residential, single family, same type of information. The left hand is the change in the percent change over the last valuation. The orange line is that average, and then the yellow dots all represent commercial properties. And as you'll notice, it jumps right out, is that most commercial properties are below that line, and some are way below that line. And what we saw in reality, when you look at the data, you get 2 charts here. One is pre-reval on the left, and the other one's post-reval on the right. And if you look at what the actual valuation numbers are out of the entire grand list, pre-reval, 70.8% of all valuation was for residential, single-family residential home. 23.4% was commercial. Not a bad split. We consider the number of properties is actually really low. I think we have less than 3% commercial properties overall, but they made up 23% of the actual valuation. But what we see post valuation, reval, is a shift in about 3.1%. Straight up. You look at those two numbers, you see 3.1% go over to the other side. And that might not seem like a lot, but 3.1% with the grand list equates to about $103 million in value, in assessed value, and $103 million at the proposed mill rate, which I'll get into shortly, would be about $3.4 million that would have been paid by the commercial properties, but now it's going to be paid spread across the residential properties, again, depending on where you fall in that spectrum of increase or decrease. And that's something we can't control. That is just the fact. That's what the reval shows, and that is a process we're bound to by state law. So with that as kind of the backdrop, I'm going to go into the proposed budget. Like Mr. Emmett spoke about, we have certain budget drivers as well. Some of them are the same. Health insurance costs in total went up about 7%. Refuse collection, we're talking about a $300,000 increase. A lot of that has to do with the yard waste collection for the first year. We talked about this when we implemented yard waste, that it was going to take probably 3 to 4 years to ramp up the collection rate there, because it's a new learning that people have to do. We have to kind of build in a new habit. They're not used to putting their yard waste on the corner in the brown bags or in the brown barrels. They're used to just throwing it in the green barrel with everything else. We have to change that approach. We were very happy with the first year in terms of the number of people that actually purchased the barrels and putting them out there every 2 weeks. But we knew there'd be an increased cost initially for the first few years, and this bears some of that, and then there's just also the regular increases that come with the refuse contract. Electricity increases. 15% is a very, probably not as conservative as we should be based upon this year, but we're hopeful that some of these fees are going to go away based upon what we've been hearing. So we tried to keep that in check somewhat. But again, the high school alone this year was over $300,000 more than budgeted, but we think that's going to come back into some kind of a leveling at this point. Pensions up 6%, retiree medicals up 10%, salaries and wages total of 7.4% increase. And again, these are all contractual. Like Mr. Emmett explained for the schools, we've gone through and negotiated a number of contracts this year. I think we just have one more to do for this year that's coming up due. But in all those, we've been at or below the average statewide. But with that and with the current inflationary pressures, those have cost to them. Revenue summary. Kind of talked a little bit about this, but again, property taxes, that biggest green section there, make up the overwhelming majority of our revenues, and that's followed by education grants for the schools, and then various other categories, investment income, intergovernmental funds from the state, and then fees and licenses. You'll notice fund balance, there's no number there because we have not in this budget proposed any use of fund balance to fund this budget at this point. That's within the council's purview to do, and they generally do some at some point to reduce the mill rate further, but that's at their discretion. So we show it there as an option, but there's no number assigned to that with the proposed budget. Where's the money go? Education's about 52% as proposed. We put the proposed Board of Ed budget exactly as we get it. Debt service is about 3%. General government, the entire amount is about 5%. But then we look at public safety, which you have police, fire, and public works. That's another 27% total, those together. That's really the bulk of your budget. And the other departments kind of fill in the gap. MDC 3%, insurance and other factors. So as we go through this by the numbers, the proposed budget recommends a total of 4.95% increase in expenditures over last year. The town's increase as proposed in the budget book is 3.85%. I will tell you, when we started this with department requests, that was up around 10%. And I don't think those were unreasonable requests. We did a lot of pencil sharpening to get this down as low as we felt was responsible, to continue to improve on the services that we are providing without being overly burdensome, particularly this year, given the reval and the impact on many residents. And this also includes about $2 million for CIP, CNEF. That's kind of the average that we've been doing for those two accounts over the last 3 years. I've stated several times in this presentation in the last few years, we need to build that. We need to do more than that. This was not the year to do that, I don't believe, unfortunately, as much as we need to. So we're proposing $1 million in each of those. Unassigned fund balance, as proposed, it's at about 11.5%. Now that is over the guidelines that we have in our policy of 7 to 10%, but particularly heading into a year where we have a potential referendum and have to go out to bond, the more you can have your fund balance up there, the better that's going to look for an interest rate. So we were trying to think long-term on that, so we try to keep that up a little higher than we would normally have to do. Debt service is decreasing in this budget by $740,000. Most of that is the high school debt service is slowly coming off the books, which is, again, a good thing as we go into a potential new bond referendum. And that's only 2.8% of our general fund budget, which is, I'll tell you, very low. If you look at other communities, they're generally much higher than that. 1 mil now, based upon the current valuation, is worth $3 million. So that means if you want to decrease this budget by $1 million, you're going to have to knock $3 million off this budget. It's that straightforward. There's a lot of work to that, but I think there are steps we can take to try to help mitigate some of this. So as proposed, with this budget, the mill rate would be 32.95%. It's currently 43 and change. So we're talking about a 10.27 drop in the mill rate. And again, that's due to the revaluation. The vehicle rate is capped, so it's going to stay at 32.46. And this budget does propose $800,000 additional dollars into the road fund. And that is to help deal with some of the inflationary pressures we've seen. We had to cut back on the road projects we've had planned for the last few years because the prices keep increasing by so much. So we're trying to mitigate some of that, but that'll be the council's discretion whether or not they want to move forward with that recommendation or not. Again, the mill rate over time, if you look at this chart, this is one I show on a regular basis. The median household income are the blue bars. We only had them up to 2023, but you can see generally the mill rate stayed fairly flat, increasing slightly over the last several years as household income has increased fairly steadily. With this proposed budget, because of the reval, we're talking about a significant drop in the mill rate. This will be the lowest, if approved at the proposed rate, will be the lowest the mill rate has been since 2011. And there have been revaluations along the way, so every 5 years. So that's a pretty significant drop. So what are some of our budget priorities? Again, maintaining the funding for capital improvement in the capital non-recurring expenditure funds at approximately $2 million, I think is critical. I don't want to drop anything below that. Maintaining a strong fund balance at the proposed 11.5% for the reasons I stated. Adequately fund the contractual anticipated market-driven increases in salary and benefits, and then adequately fund all the other contractual increases that we have. So all of our software, hardware contracts, those types of things, service contracts, they all have built-in increases that we have to maintain, and so this budget would accomplish that. We'll focus on education for a minute. As Superintendent Emmett stated, they're coming in for $68,153,339 requests. That's 4.95% increase over last year's budget, or approximately $3.2 million. In August each year, we do go through a process where we also calculate something we have to do for the state. We have to calculate what the cost to the town is for other services that we provide to them, to the schools specifically. And so for the FY 23-24 fiscal year, which is the year that would account for this budget in this process, it's about $11.8 million. That includes all custodial and non-custodial services direct to the school, and about $7.5 million, and then the debt service for that fiscal year, $4.3 million. And again, the debt service number is 4.3 in the fiscal year 23-24. This year, we're looking at that 3.64 is what is expected to drop to for the fiscal year. proposed budget also includes that increase of $800,000 that I mentioned for the road fund, and the engineering department has also requested an additional $35,000 for their budget for the sidewalk repair matching fund program. We did that as a pilot a couple years ago. We continued it last year. It's been very successful. We've had good use of the funds, and a number of the sidewalk slabs throughout town have been restored, and so the engineering department's recommended that we keep that going. It's something that it helps offset the cost for those that might not be able to afford the full cost of it, and there's a process that they have to go through the social services department to apply for that. Capital improvement projects, as part of the budget document, you'll see that the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee has ranked 41 projects that were requested by the various departments, totaling over $6.5 million. The proposed budget has $1 million to fund these projects, so obviously there are some decisions to be made, but they did a priority ranking for the council's consideration. Really, the projects run the gamut. There are road projects, there are drainage projects, there are parks and recreation projects. It's pretty much everything under the sun. Excuse me. There are a few position and reclassification requests that we do have in this budget. For the town manager's budget, we are requesting that the social media and communications manager position be installed as a full-time position. Right now, we did that as a test using some of the ARPA funds on a part-time basis. I think we've shown over the last year or so the value of having dedicated personnel to do that work. And again, with the pending budget referendum, school bond referendum, and other things going on in town, I think it's critical that we maintain control of that message and help get the word out. And I'm asking for that position to be funded in this year's budget. There's some, through the class and compensation and some reorganizations, we're asking for some salary increases for certain departments, asking to move a finance position from part-time to full-time. We have a part-time individual that is going to be leaving soon, and given the amount of work in the finance department, I think it's critical that we get more help in that department. And so we are asking to make that a full-time position. And then we have a building department position that we did on a pilot basis this year, where it's really about working with, I talked about all the projects that are being done on the Silas Deane and other in the commercial sector. These are big projects. Fresh Market, they have their grand opening is coming up this week on the 23rd. We have several other grand openings coming up. These projects take a lot of work to coordinate with the town departments for inspections. And in the past, I will say when I got here, Weathersfield didn't have the best reputation of working with the various companies to get through the process, where it's getting the approvals to getting the permits done. And so we've worked very hard to come up with creative ways to be more business friendly and help show that we're going to help anyone that wants to open a business in Weathersfield, that we're going to walk them through this process. So we did this on a test basis in the building department, and all accounts, it's done wonders. I mean, we've received lots of very positive feedback from the developers, from the companies opening up in town, and we feel like this is an important position to maintain. We do have some revenue offsets that are going to help pay for this position, and we'll be discussing that in the budget meeting with that department when they come forward. And then finally, police. We have going from part-time to full-time animal control officer. Previous to this year, we partnered with the town of Newington for animal control. Newington contacted us back in, I want to say January timeframe, and said that they were no longer interested in that arrangement, that they wanted to maintain their animal control officer on their own and not share positions with us anymore. So we kind of had to do an adjustment. And so we did have part-time position funded there, but this is a requirement. We have to have animal control. And so this is a pretty necessary position. That the money there is the difference between what we had budgeted last year and what's required for the full-time position. So in summary, I use this graphic in the past years. I think it's pretty effective if the dollar bill represents all of our expenditures for this proposed budget. This area in orange here, 52%, that's the school budget as presented by the Board of Ed. This smaller orange area is that additional funds that we pay for the schools So that brings their total up to about 61%. If you want to look at public safety and public works, that's an additional 26%. And then 13% is everything else. So it's all of the staff on the general government side. It's all of the funds for contingency, for fund balance. There are all of our contractual requirements. It's Parks and Rec. It's MDC. It's electric bills. It's everything. And that's 13% of the total budget. So with that, again, I think this budget does a lot of what we try to accomplish each year with our budgets. It supports the schools completely with their ask. It funds commitments and obligations. It maintains the capital funding. It improves our levels of services that we provide. It maintains or increases our reserves, and it continues to reduce the debt service. Schedule, again, we are here at the public hearing. As the mayor mentioned earlier, we have the department work sessions coming up over the next 2 weeks, and that's followed by some deliberation meetings with the council and leading to the final budget vote, which is currently scheduled for the 14th. And with that, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.